Was.
That's next week. But 80s.
Yes, it's Finnish Football Show. Back for a new season. We've been away for a little while, but thank you for joining us again. Joined today by Mark from FC Suomi. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
And Rich from Escape to Suomi.
Hello.
And as ever, I'm Mark from Explore Finland radio show. Traditional start to the show. What shirt are you wearing, Rich?
I've got the new Ilves shirt for this season, which is sponsored by a local Tampere sausage factory. It's not their regular sponsor, it's their local one they're using cup games and friendlies, but I saw it and I knew I just had to have it. So luckily, thanks to Ville at Ilves store for sorting me out. I've got my name on the back as well. So.
When I saw the picture, when you shared it on Twitter, and there was only one sponsor, I thought maybe that was their European shirt for this year.
It might be, actually. I suppose. I don't know how much sausages pay, but yeah, no, it'd be a good one. And yeah, no, it's good. I think more clubs should be sponsored by local meat vendors.
And sending you a shirt from their store as well.
I'm not going to say no to
that. I think before we go any further, I and I'm sure Mark wants to say congratulations to you, Rich, and your much better half, Hanne, for the new addition to the Nelson household. Is Emilia going to make an appearance tonight? Are you going to have both kids on your lap?
No, they're both in bed now, but I'm hoping that in sort of 16 to 17 years' time, Emilia, she's a little bit smaller and slimmer than her big sister. She'll be more of a number 10 for the Finnish ladies team, whereas her big sister's going to be a big bruising centre half. But their Finnish passports are being sorted as we speak, and yeah, their Finnish is already better than mine. So
already after 8 weeks, she speaks better than you. This episode is live on YouTube as ever, so we'll be checking out and see who's watching us live. I can see there's 4 people watching now, although one of those may include me because I'm keeping an eye on us. So if there's 3 others there, use the box at the side of the screen and say hi. Oh, we got someone there already, Veikkausliiga, who's saying, "Is this going to start today?" Well, it's already started, so thanks for your patience. It was Mark's fault; he had a little bit of a technical hitch. It's nice to know that there's actually people there waiting for us to get started. This is FFS 19, first full show of 2018. There's been a couple of episodes of Finnish Football Shorts earlier this year, so go back into the archive and check them out if you've missed them. We're at that crucial time of the year when the Suomen Cup is coming into the closing rounds. There was also recently an international break where the Finnish national team, the Huuhkajat, the Eagle Owls, continued their recent run of good form. And oh yeah, the Veikkausliiga is about to start. So it's all go at the Finnish Football Show right now. So we're going to pretty much focus on those 3 subjects today. We'll start with Suomen Cup, then we'll talk about Huuhkajat and Veikkausliiga, and maybe 1 or 2 other little bits and pieces as well. So as I said, we want your input. If you're a live viewer, make some comments on the side of the screen there, and we'll try and bring them into the conversation. Podcast listeners, use social media to get in touch with your feedback. Our handles on Twitter, Mark is at FC Suomi, Rich is at Escape to Suomi, and I am at Explore Finland. I'm not on there often, but I do check to see if anyone's making contact. So keep in touch with us. And also you can find the Finnish Football Show Facebook group. Just ask us to join and we'll let you in, probably, unless you're an idiot. Then we might not.
We've not had any yet.
I'm also planning to get the podcast out. The Veikkausliiga, as we will talk about, starts this weekend on Saturday the 7th. So we will... or is it actually maybe tomorrow on Friday the 6th at the first couple of games? We'll try and get this podcast out as quickly as we possibly can so that our preview has some relevance. Finally, before I shut up and let the others do their thing, Rich, no noisy biscuits and no F-bombs, please.
I'll do my best. I've run out of biscuits.
Glad. But I'm sure you got some rusks. You can always suck one of those. They're a lot quieter than biscuits.
Got a bag in the cupboard.
Okay, let's go over to the Suomen Cup. In the show notes for this episode and in future, I'm going to try and put a link to where you can kind of find the most up-to-date information about any particular topic that we're talking about. So you'll find those in there. About a week ago, on the 29th of March, there were the 4 quarterfinal games, and that was followed earlier this week by the 2 semi-finals. Rather than me reading out a long list of results, Rich, do you want to talk everyone through what went on?
Yeah, basically, so as Mark said, the convoluted method of sorting out who reaches the knockout rounds, we had 5 groups. The winners all went through to the quarterfinals. The various runners-up played off to reach quarterfinals. The semi-finals were Huuhkajat against Huuhkajat and EAF against Inter. Huuhkajat won 2-1, Inter won 5-0 in a game that was postponed due to snow. This year, the Paloliita have seen some sense. They've brought the final forward, and that'll be played on the 12th of May. So that's Huuhkajat against Inter. That's going to be played at Huuhkajat Stadium, giving them a nice little home advantage.
That's just what they need, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're the holders and the league champions, but that was a supposedly random draw made yesterday. Because last year, the final, I think it was nearly 6 months between the semi-final and the final. Everyone completely forgot about it until it rolled around again. The only sticky point about this now is that the European place, so assuming Inter win the cup, don't qualify for Europe through the league, they have to wait about 17 months before they can play in the Europa League. So not 17, 15 months before they can play in the Europa League, because this season's place has already been sorted. But fair play to them, at least they've, it's always nice to have a cup final in May.
Oh yeah, playing the semis in March and the quarterfinals in March, the semis in April, and then it's only like maybe 5 weeks into the final. At least there's some momentum. That was the thing last year. It was like semi-finals in April, like you say, and then the final in October, and it was, I don't know, just didn't.
Yeah, I mean it's an improvement on last year. I mean the whole cup situation we've made several comments on already. The magazine AOM had an article on Tuesday about the sort of loss of the magic of the cup, and I mean this could apply to most European countries really. It was the usual moans about the format and the clubs and Paloliita. Now I'm kind of sitting on the fence with that one, because while the cup is very much the poor relation, it's basically a pre-season tournament now. There were some good comments, with a bit of discussion on Twitter about it, and Colm O'Neill, an Irish guy who plays in one of the lower division teams, Ruiz, good one, I might talk about later. He was basically saying that it's important that lower league clubs get a shot at playing a big team. It's important for their history and profile. And at the moment, I think it's only 4 lower league clubs qualify for the group stage. So, I mean, there's a lot.
What are you classing as lower league? Do you mean outside of Veikkausliiga?
Outside the top 2.
Right. Okay.
And then some of the third division team or second division teams qualify as well. But basically, all the other clubs who do enter, they play off, and only 4 get through to the group stage. So, I mean, it's a whole thing. It could take 20 years. A lot of it's nostalgia. A lot of it's me being an Englishman who remembers the cup finals of the 80s and 90s over here. But at least they've made a change with the final, and hopefully it's a good one.
Well, I think it's worth noting as well that in the 4 quarterfinal games, so with those 8 teams there, 3 of them were from Ykkönen, and you had this EAF from Raseborg playing Hakka, both teams from Ykkönen, so which meant that obviously EAF got through to the semis, where they had their arse handed to them on a plate by Inter. But anyway, they still got through to the semi-finals. So
it is a bit of bit of a mess though, because I mean one of the major reasons why they wanted to change the format was because they thought that the Liga Cup was basically wasting everybody's time at the start of the season.
So they'd rather waste it with the Suomen Cup.
Well, yeah. So what they wanted to do is they thought that the Liga Cup was detracting from the majesty of the cup, and they wanted to focus all the teams roughly on the Suomen Cup. But really, what they've ended up doing over the space of what is it now? It's only 2 years, I think, is just recreate what the Liga Cup was in the Suomen Cup. So it's really like they've lost is, like Rich said, the games against teams like Kolmen and Nelonen, where you get some. Where the quality's the quality's not there, but you can get some like really entertaining sort of fixtures, and it's one of those sort of community-based things. It's not easy to get people interested or committed to Finnish football at the minute, and one of the reasons is guys, the hundreds of thousands of guys that are registered players for clubs lower down the pyramid, they don't get a shot at the big boys anymore because nobody pays the money for it.
So this season's cup will finish in May, and next season's competition starts in June. I'm guessing, Rich. Is that how it worked in the last?
It might be a bit later, but yeah, the idea was that this year's competition would finish before next year's one started, because last year we had the farce of the final being of last year's, the previous year's being played around the time of the third round of this year's, and it was a joke.
I think it's tidier, and I think we share the same kind of reservations about the format. But good luck to HJK and FC Inter in the final, and to the fans of those teams. Let's move on to Huuhkajat. Mark, I copied my headline from the last time we spoke. The revolution rolls on.
Yeah, in a way. So we've had 2 games in March against Macedonia and Malta. Neither of those 2 guys were particularly strong opponents, but we were sort of hoping to see something a bit special. The Macedonia game was an incredible headache, and I think we have to sort of say quite a large waste of time, but. In a strange way, the pit on the pitch, I think that you can't have too many complaints about the style of play that Kanerva's got, the capabilities of the players that are there, and then how they're working together. I mean, one of the things that Finland has traditionally struggled with is beating teams of a lower order, right? So I remember sort of away trips to Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Andorra, where we struggled through quagmire pitches to make any kind of any kind of impact on the game. And then Liechtenstein were over last year, and they managed to sort of bog the game down and keep everything restricted. So particularly after the Macedonia game, which was a bit of a snooze fest, I think there was a lot of fans had a bit of sort of trepidation that the Malta game would turn into one of those sort of terrible grinding out result, sort of low impact, low energy affair. And what turned out in the Malta game was a nice, easy 5-0 stroll in the park that had a lot of really nice positives from a Finnish perspective.
As an Englishman, seeing a result of someone 5 against Malta, that's what you kind of expected sort of 30 years ago when we were kids growing up, and to see Finland on the right end of one of those results was nice to see, and the goals just sort of flowing in.
Yeah, the goals are flowing in. I mean, one of the things you got to try and remember as well is that I think England played Malta last year, and I think they beat them 4-0. So, you don't want to. You can't obviously read too much into it, but we're in that sort of category of giving them a bit of a pasting. I think one of the most encouraging things is that it wasn't there wasn't a ton of caps on the pitch. So Kalle Taimi was playing his first or second, depending on whether or not you're in FIFA, game for Finland, and he looked pretty steady and solid, even though he was playing right back for most of the game when he was there, and he doesn't tend to play right back in the Veikkausliiga, but he looked good. He got up and down quite well and got himself a goal and an assist. Pukki took his chances, which is it's not every show we get to turn around and say, yeah, Pukki just just got on the end of it and put it away. Jensen, Magubi, Thomas Lamb looked good. Buru Soiri again got a goal. He looked pretty good. So a lot of the younger kids that are coming through got themselves involved in the game, moved their opponent around and, had a real sort of impact. So you can't read too much into it because it's Malta, but I mean, you can't really complain about a 5-0 win at the end.
Can I read into it that the national team is now undefeated since June 2017?
8 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's genuinely like really. It's you can't, like I said, you don't want to get too carried away, but 8 games unbeaten is a nice feeling, and it looks like, I think after the dark days of Hans Backer, it just looks like we're back in a position of being like a standard international team. I think we're 68th in the rankings at the minute. We won't get a ton of help from a 5-0 win over Malta, but we'll move up a couple of places, I think.
They're set to go to 63rd.
63rd.
63rd when they come out next week.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was about to say that the days of episode 12 in December 2016 with the title Backer, Sack and Crack seem a long way behind now. And I'd be much happier writing headlines praising what's going on for the Huuhkajat.
Well, so you don't get too far ahead of yourself, because so while everything on the pitch was, I think, nice and relatively good and easy to understand, there was a couple of issues with first of all, both of the games were hosted in south of Turkey, and I think the official report said that the attendance was 200, but it's like a round number. I'm pretty sure that's like I'm pretty sure there wasn't 200 people in the stadium watching the game. And it's a bit like, one of the problems with the Macedonia game is both teams looked at it like it was an away game, right? So everybody sat back. There wasn't a particularly high pressure on the ball. There wasn't a particular impetus to go for the jugular, so to speak. Finland only created, I think we only had 2 shots on, and I think the first one of those was a Pukki header at about 78 minutes, something like that. So both teams really sort of like felt each other out, and it had the feel of it wasn't even like it was barely even a training game, the kind of intensity. And I think if you're either in Macedonia or in Finland, after about 45, 50 minutes, the crowd starts to get on the back and gives the players a bit of a yell, bit of a push to sort of get into the game. So while everything on the pitch is looking all right, there's young players that are developing quite nicely. We seem to have kind of handled a little bit. I mean, it's only early days, but we've lost 3 big players through retirements in the last couple of months, and we seem to have handled that relatively well. But off the pitch, I don't know why you'd pick the south of Turkey to have 2 matches against 2 teams that no neutral fan is going to want to see. I mean, if you were just like a holiday maker on the south coast of Turkey, and you walked past the stadium and you had a look in and thought, "Who's that? Was that Finland, Macedonia?" No. I think there's a happy hours on. So
we talked in the last episode, in episode 18, about the UEFA Nations League, and talked about the theory behind it. But I don't think at the time the group had been drawn. So I thought maybe we could just talk through that a little bit. Finland are in, again, I don't want to go into the big details. I think everyone's starting to get the hang of what the UEFA Nations League is all about, and that it's in these leagues, and within each league there are groups, and the teams will play each other twice, and at the end of this league stage, there will be some promotion and relegation, and there will also be opportunities for qualifications to the future European Championships. Without going in any more detail than that, just to say that Finland are in League C, Group 2, along with Hungary, Greece, and Estonia, and they're going to play 6 games later this year: 2 in September, 2 in October, and 2 in November. Personally, I'm starting to warm up to this idea because it gives some meaningful competitive games in a quite tight period of time, over probably an 8-week period, against and they're competitive in two ways. It's a competition that means something, and they're between teams that should be of an equal kind of level. Therefore, they're competitive. I know, Mark, you had some reservations maybe a year ago about, is this going to take away Finland's opportunity to play teams and push themselves up through the rankings? But I kind of see this as being maybe positive and being a way to. There's no team. The way they're playing at the moment, none of those teams are unbeatable by Finland, and therefore there's an opportunity to get one of those wildcard qualifying places, move up into into the next league. Maybe you're smirking. Stop smirking, boy.
Well, yeah, you have to remember I'm a bit of a curmudgeon, so so I can't be overly optimistic. No, I mean it's a fair point. All those teams are beatable. The other side of it is we've played all those teams in the last 2 years, 3 years, and all. I mean,
but in the last 8 games,
no,
played Estonia, isn't it?
Yeah, we actually Estonia is in one of the last 8 games. We beat them in November. No, so it's good. They are good. They are beatable teams. Estonia look like as a national team they're in a fair bit of trouble. So I think we might be able to give them a bit of a pounding. But I mean, Hungary and Greece have sort of recovered from the devastation they were in a couple of years ago, so they won't be so easy, and they'll generally play unattractive football. Hungary, Hungary will be much of a muchness in the same sort of vein. I think if we can get about them and get into them, then we might be able to make a game of it. But generally, what they'll look to do is strong arm the ball, block, like pile everything into the midfield, slow the game down and stop it, work on set pieces and long balls and counterattacks. So in a sense, you sort of get back into that sort of attritional football, and that's the bit that I'm kind of not worried about. But it would just be like you know, some of the best memories from the Olympia Stadium were the 3-3 draw against Germany. You know what I mean? We don't have a great record against the big teams, but it's always good to put yourself up in that sort of space because it allows you to sort of play the game. But
then by winning this group, beating these teams that are around Finland and are beatable, then you go up into a group that's in League B, where you're playing against better teams, and isn't that allowed? I mean, this seems to be the competition that people have been crying out for these really tiny teams that get thumped 7-0 every time they play one of the bigger nations. It gives them a chance to play each other, compete against each other, and maybe start to develop.
Yeah. I mean, so there is that element. It'll give us a chance to progress and grow, and it's nice, and it sort of feels very efficient and orderly and FIFA. It feels very bureaucratic. The trade-off is, we don't have Trinidad and Tobago or Japan or, some of the sort of sexier end of the more interesting ends of the sort of football world to get in touch with. And I'm always a bit sad, but then, like I said, I'm a bit of a curmudgeon.
One thing I didn't look up was, if these games are being played September to November, when does qualifying for the next European Championship start?
It's a bit later on. I think they're not doing the draw until February or March next year.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because again they're going to condense those games. They already know, so they'll already know who the some of the wildcard entries might be. But yeah, it's the Nations League is there to kind of bridge that gap. So then rather than having the Euro qualifier spread over a year and a quarter, they're going to be condensed then into maybe 8 or 9 months.
So starting maybe early, like in a year's time, in spring 2019, and finishing by November. Yeah. And therefore, this Euro, this Nations League takes place every second year?
I believe so. Yeah, they're going to fit it in around the World Cup as well. I think not obviously there's no qualification for the World Cup, but I believe there's some just to keep up that competitive momentum. Otherwise, you're then going to have 4 years between league, promotion, relegation.
And what you mean is that there's no qualifying from the Nations League into the World Cup, but they will keep the competition going just so that it becomes a regular thing.
Yeah, there's no qualification prize, but there's still going to be promotion, relegation, and the League A will have a winner, as it were. They get a cup at Wembley.
Yeah, I like this. I like this more and more. I think we'll wait and see if Finland get hammered and England disgrace themselves. I might turn on it as well. But for right now, I'm enjoying it, and maybe this is why I've got my retro. It wasn't retro when I bought it. Finland shirt on, but Finland will be gracing the field in a new kit, or maybe they already are, Rich.
Yeah, they unveiled in a very strange little video just before the Macedonia game. It's that time of year, we're in the run-up to a World Cup where the big companies bring out their kits for the big tournament. You've got Adidas seem to be raiding the early 90s for their some of their kits. The Germany one is good, Colombia. Even Nike are doing well with, strangely, the teams that didn't make the World Cups. USA, Chile have got great kits. France, England have got their training kits are going back to retro. Even the England training kit looks like the Admiral 82 shirt, which is apparently very sought after. Finland, on the other hand, have gone for what can only be described as the bargain bin again.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's difficult, especially for podcast listeners. It's white with a bit of blue on it.
Have you? How strange. Have you got a picture of this that you can maybe send to me, and I'll put it in the show notes?
Yes, of course. I can, if I can even show it to the camera on my phone, that might work. But the point I was going to make was that one of my followers, and it was Charisma Official, made the comment that it looks very much like the sort of outfit that Mother Teresa would used to wear. Now, you probably can't really see it very well on the screen, but it's a bit
bright. Didn't really show. If you send it to me, I'll put it in the show notes.
Imagine what Mother Teresa used to wear. It looks a bit like that, only with a Finland badge.
I mean, if you want to know what it looks like, you go to Amazon.com and type in basic Nike football shirt on sale, and then click it, and then just scroll past the black and the yellow, and scroll past the green and the purple, and then after a while you'll get into that nice white and blue one, and I
can't wait to get one. I think
it's on sale in I think it's the 15th of April at Fanimo, and will no doubt be at the bargain price of about €90. And bear in mind the last Finland shirt, which was incredibly dull, but it served a purpose. That's currently £22 at Sports Direct. So
served the purpose of allowing the players to identify which of their teammates
and not look like deceased saints. Yes.
I know the Cowpat one got a bad rap, but I mean, if that's if you roll the dice and every 4 or 5 shirts you get like a Cowpat national team jersey, then I'd take that just to have a bit of flair or something like that. Just to have like the American one, the USA kit's just seen it's like that faded beautiful stripe across it. Oh, it's just fantastic.
You guys are real kit perverts. I haven't seen any of this stuff.
I prefer the term #kit nerd, but it's one of those things. It's maybe I'm just going back to my youth, but it's.
I'm not sure you missed it, Rich.
No, I'm still there. But the kits that some of them, I mean, they're really ploughing the retro stuff from the early 90s. Some of the kits that Adidas have brought out have been fantastic. And, they're the ones with the bold stripes down the shoulders, and some of I think the Mexico one is almost identical to the one they had at the 94 World Cup. Versions that Finland had in their own white and blue that perhaps if Finland was still with Adidas, who knows, they might have them. UEFA do a scheme actually where they arrange for countries, sort of lower ranked countries, to get kits supplied to them. They did one, I think they publicised last week for Liechtenstein, and even that was nicer. It was Macron, but I'd have taken that.
Yeah. It's just anything with a bit of, it's just white and blue trim. That's literally the only thing you can say about it.
So is the official review from the Finnish football show? Meh. Okay.
Back to Adidas.
Let's go on to Veikkausliiga. Just a little bit of a summary from the end of last year. So HIFK and JJK were relegated from Veikkausliiga at the end of the season. They were replaced by TPS and Honka, coming back to Veikkausliiga from Ykkönen. A couple of traditional names there coming back into the top flight. The season kicks off tomorrow and over this weekend. So let's go back to you, Rich. Where do you want to take us to start with?
Well, this week was the official launch. They have a big media day in Helsinki, and all the clubs go, and big press conferences and so on. And in a sort of way that's more similar to maybe MLS in America, the clubs publish their budgets for the year, make it quite clear. And like in a lot of leagues, the player budget, it could very well read like a league table. Hoiko have set aside €1.5 million this season for wages, expenses, player stuff, really. If you go all the way down to the bottom, TPS have budgeted 350 grand. So about a sixth of what Hoiko pay. Now, of course, the game's not going to be played off the pitch, but you'd like to think that with semi-competent people, which is a bit of a lottery anyway, in charge, that should translate. The rest of the top six, you've got Rcih, Inter, clubs that have got fairly well-off backers. You're looking a bit further down, seeing Ilves, who came third last year, and they've only got a budget of just over $500,000, which for a team that's in the Europa League, if they get through a couple of rounds in the Europa League, that basically earns that budget back. Obviously, that's a big ask. But again,
can you send me that link, and I'll put it in the show notes, because that might,
of course,
to have a look through. And I think there is a general understanding nowadays that if you pay more in wages, you will attract better players, and you'll probably do better in the league.
Probably, and I guess for the last however long, but Hoiko are by far the best run, the best resourced club in Finland. But for a couple of years, they didn't win the league, when they really, off the pitch, are miles ahead of the competition. Obviously, last year they won the double, but again, you're talking about the best players. It's such a lottery. We'll talk about the clubs have had best part of 5 months to bring in new players. There's always quite a lot of turnover, particularly around the foreign players that the clubs have. Hoiko signed Tuko from Ilves. He left without playing a game and moved to Qatar. He was, I think, the second or third top scorer in the division last year. Yeah. They brought in 2 players on loan for the season, and I think again they did so well with Morelos a couple of years ago. They brought him on loan from Colombia, signed him on a permanent deal, flogged him to Rangers, and now they're looking at a deal of I think Chinese clubs will sniff him for about 10 million quid, and Hoiko apparently have a 10% sell on. So if he does move on, great for them. They've signed a Brazilian fella on loan from I think it's Hoffenheim.
Klaus,
yes. And
Klaus is the Brazilian.
Klaus, the Brazilian. And they've also signed an Egyptian international striker, Amir Gamal, who's amazing in this year's Panini sticker book, so he must be good. He is coming on loan until August with, I think, the idea is that if he hits the ground running for Hoiko, gets a few goals, he might get into the World Cup squad. Bit of a stretch, but and again, we talked about transfers. That there haven't been the huge amount. The most interesting one, I guess, is probably Tay Taiwo, who was at Hoiko a couple of years ago as a left back, was at one point the top scorer in the league from left back. He used to play for Marseille, AC Milan, QPR. He's now at Robs. There was an interview of him in the Ilta-Sanomat today, or Thursday. He's moved there because Rob's new coach, Toni Koskela, used to manage Klubi 04, who's Hoiko's reserves. So they have that connection. He's gone there really for just a change. I think his family is still in Italy, where he lives normally, but he's real World Cup appearances. He's got that pedigree. I mean, even at Hoiko a couple of years ago, he stood out like a sore thumb. He was that good. Rops have had a bit of a transitional year last year. They've got a few young kids, and he should do well there. I don't think he's even on particularly big money. I mean, it's not like he said in the interview today he didn't really need it. He's just there as a new challenge, and why not go to Lapland when yesterday they played a training match against KPV and it was really heavy snow.
It's all that experience. Yeah. It's all good experience.
Yeah, it's good for the kids, and he's quality player. So, and again, it just goes to show that
that's my next stop.
Yeah, it's networking, isn't it?
And that game that was played in the snow yesterday would have come under this new rule about no postponements. Then.
Yeah, well, that came out at the media day where Ari Lahti, who's the new chairman or president of Paloliitto, and the president of Veikkausliiga, Matti Apponen, they talked about the general process of improving the infrastructure and stadia in the country. We've already had in the last couple of years some new stadia, from Seinäjoki and Vaasa, and Rovaniemi. They're looking at making these properly fit for purpose. They've essentially banned postponing matches on weather grounds in advance. I suppose if it happens on the day, there's not much you can do about it. But they've basically said that you're not allowed to postpone it purely because the pitch isn't ready. They've said the only alternatives you've got are to switch the venue so you can play a nearby artificial pitch if it's suitable, or you can switch to play at the opponent's stadium. So your home game becomes an away game. That doesn't get exchanged. You just basically lose that home game. Now, a day after the rule change came out, we've already had our first victim. TPS, whose first home game of the season is next week against Rcih. The pitch at the Veritas Stadion, it's been bubbling on social media for a few weeks, is a dreadful state. It wasn't in any condition anyway. They had really bad snow this week. So they've said that they have to move the game to Valkeakoski, which is 100 miles away.
Yeah, it's just sort of south of Tampere, isn't it?
Yeah, so they've got to. So their alternative was either to play that game in Seinäjoki, giving Rcih the home advantage, or they'll play in Valkeakoski. So they've swallowed that. It's their first game back in the division after, I think, 3 years absence, and they've got to play at Häcken Stadium.
It's interesting concept because while there are 2 or 3 very good stadiums with the artificial pitches, there are a lot of clubs without that luxury, and it's been a long tough winter. There's been snow on my garden for about 5 months now, I reckon. And if I had to get a game on tomorrow, I think I'd be struggling. So knowing that the league, especially if this was announced this week and the games are meant to start in a couple of days' time, but knowing that the league is about to start and you've still got, I don't know, a foot of snow there. Okay, you can clear it, but it's still coming down as well in certain areas.
I don't know. I like it because if you remember, I mean, the start of last season, we were pretty miffed at the sort of we got to a place I think after about a month where there were teams that had played 5-6 games and others that had barely done one, and it's a really weird sort of disparity. And I think the thing is, it sounds a bit sort of harsh to start with, but there's 2 types of problems. There's your PS Chemi type of problem, which is that it's going to snow there until probably June. I don't know, like at least until Vappu, so until about May. But last year they didn't really kind of come up with any contingency plans. They ended up calling games off like on the day, and then you've got your Veritas Stadium type of problem, which is that the weather conditions aren't probably that bad. It's just the pitch doesn't get itself into that condition. So at least what you've got is now clubs thinking about, well, we need to take care of our pitches and we need to start planning ahead for fans and for the club, because there's an actual penalty to it. So I don't know. I quite like the other side of it.
Was this announced earlier, or has this been sort of have the clubs been informed recently?
No, they apparently there was a vote, but it came out yesterday at the media launch. Obviously, I don't know what the rules are. I should do really about votes and say in the Premier League, for example, in England, any rule change they have to get 2/3 of the teams to agree before they'll change a rule. You've already had the chairman of IFK Mariehamn coming out and saying that it's very much penalising them because they always seem to play Hoiko in Helsinki. They don't have an alternative on their island. They have to then travel to the mainland as well. So you're adding the travel. I mean, again, I'm sort of in 2 minds. I think in a couple of years' time, I know there's a lot of projects about new stadium in Kuopio and Honka. Even Hoiko are talking about a new ground, but not that it really affects them at the moment. But you've got Kemi having to play their games in Rovaniemi and in Oulu. I think a couple of years' notice might have served a little bit better, purely to give them a little bit more time. But then, as you say, otherwise you're looking at, especially with games around the European times, you're having to cram them in, and players already moan quite a lot on Twitter about having to play so many games in the period of time that the league's on. There was a stat that came out last year that Finland had the most condensed calendar in Europe in terms of number of games per for the length of the season. Anyway, they had the most or the fewest days in between games on average. So otherwise, you're looking at huge burnout. And again, there's still risks.
7-month season, and 33 league games, and not really any cup games. Not for the top teams. I reckon they should quit belly aching and get on and play football.
I'd do it for free.
I mean, I suppose the other thing to think about as well is that is teams like Yiiko, because you mentioned like the massive disparity already in budgets at the start, right? Like between Hoiko and like the lower end of the league. An Ykkönen team that comes up and then let's say is disaffected by weather and has to shift 3 or 4 games. That's two players. There's a player or 2 players to somebody like Yiiko came up and they went straight back down. But I mean, there's teams in Ykkönen where you think if they don't have anything kind of to hand locally, then they'll be properly shafted by that because it costs money. But
let's look just a little bit further down the league table. We also discussed this in episode 18 at the end of last year, but about the academy teams and I don't know if there are reserve teams. Looking at the league tables, there's Hoiko Klubi 04 in Ykkönen. There's Honka and Hifki academies in Kakkonen Group B, and Asiko's academy in Kakkonen Group C. Some of these were like Asiko's was Asiko/2. So I don't know if it's actually academy team or reserve team or quite how it works out, but there's been a bit of a furore in the UK about youth teams or whatever playing in the EFL Cup. Rich, you got your head in your hands. Is that at the thought of academy teams playing in the league?
I mean, it's. I guess in Finland it's slightly different. It's kind of been going on for a while. I mean, the issue in England is that there is that infrastructure and history and background where so many towns, regions have their own clubs and identities. In Finland, I suppose it's slightly different in that those clubs are already in the system and they don't really have reserve leagues. I mean, that's a whole other argument about either stockpiling of players or the disparate size in academies themselves. But we are getting to the point where if Klubi 04 have a good year, they're not going to be allowed to get promoted. It's going to warp that division. You've also got in Kakkonen Kups's farm team, Kufu. They, so I think you've got 4 reserve academy sides in that 3rd division as well. We already, we have a good laugh when they draw each other or play each other in the cups, but I know the league system doesn't allow it. But there is a huge difference when, or if Klubi turn up for a game in the Hoiko coach, they train in by Finnish standards, state-of-the-art facilities. They have the access to all the good coaching and everything against a team of, part-timers, players who either on their way up or on their way down. It does kind of warp things a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to get into the sort of fan culture side of it, but it is a little bit, maybe just to me or to us, it's a little bit strange. But unfortunately, I think we're kind of past that now, and it happens in plenty of other countries in Europe as well.
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, I don't know. Something doesn't sit right with me about it. I don't mean to be sort of demeaning or anything, but Finland just doesn't sort of seem. It doesn't feel big enough to have like a league system that's got academy teams in it, because because those academy teams carry with them so much like preparation and so much kind of care, and they've got like everything that they could possibly need. Like they've got cover and like infrastructure around them, like a Veikkausliiga team. And it's not like it's not exactly an even playing field when that's the case, because they've got like physios and coaches and like everything else. And it's a bit, I don't know. It just seems like everything seems to be geared towards this sort of bureaucratic, UEFA version of what football should be. And it seems like in that model, it's going to be really hard to get like fans on board, to get more people involved, like in the sport, because it's got to be a turnoff, or I can tell you it is a turnoff when you've got like 10 or like 15 guys with you, and you've got your boots that you've tried to take care of and scrub, and you've got your kit from the guy whose turn it was to wash it, and then a coach rocks up and out pops 3 or 4 coaches and tracksuits, and then a bunch of teenagers that all look like they can do about 100 meters in 10 and a half, 11 seconds, and you think, Jesus Christ, lads, this is going to be a hell of a match. And it's, I mean, the competition's good and all the rest of it. It's just, it's sort of, it feels almost like it's like a 2-tier system.
It's possible it could be very much a 2-tier system where you have the Veikkausliiga, and then Ukkonen is full of academy teams for those clubs that are in the Veikkausliiga. If it's possible that from the 3 Kakkonen divisions, that 2 of these academy sides could get promoted into Ukkonen. And I don't know. That's I kind of agree with Mark, I think, on this one, Rich. Just that it sits a little bit uneasy.
Yeah,
with me, and is a bit less interesting to see the academy sides playing against each other in the second, potentially in the second flight of the professional league, I suppose.
Yeah, because there are teams, that historically big clubs. I know there's again a high turnover of clubs for what they are. They fold, they reform, they fold, they reform. But there's clubs with huge history. So even Haka in Ukkonen, the second most successful team in Finland's history, are going to be competing against Hoiko reserves. Next season it could be Asiko reserves, Honka reserves, Kups reserves. This is a club with, I think, 9 league titles. They got to a Cup Winners' Cup quarter-final in our lifetime. It's playing against people.
We lost you there for a minute, Rich.
The
last thing I heard was that you got clubs with 9 league titles.
Yeah, Haka have got 9 league titles. They've reached a Cup Winners' Cup in the last sort of 30 years, and yet they're going to be playing against basically reserve teams, because there isn't that appetite to set up a reserve league. It's I don't know. I mean, again, it sits uneasy with me. I'm just trying to caveat it with maybe it's my English hat. But.
Well, yeah. It's a tricky one, because I mean, the other thing is that those youngsters, they need, like, if you want proper development, they need all the support they can get, and we need all the coordination around them to try and get them to kind of improve on their game. But it just hurts. It hurts old fellas like me.
But then Rcih folded their academy side at the end of the season and said that they'd start loaning players out instead. Now, I don't know if that's because they got relegated from their division, but they've said, in their opinion, that the academy team setup didn't really suit them.
You mean the Rcih academy team got relegated?
Yeah, so they got relegated from, I think it was Kakkonen or Kolmonen. So they've decided, rather than have an academy team at all, they'll just make more efforts to loan out their players. So
it's about an hour's train. It's about an hour on the train into Helsinki Centre. So I think the catchment area of Hoiko's. I mean, the number of squads and teams that they have in all the divisions is enormous. So that's not an easy kind of catchment area.
One of Hoiko, I think it was their under 14s, played PK35's women and beat them 5-2. I think in a couple of months ago. So this is a team of under 14 boys. But again, that's probably the best 11, 16 under 14s in Helsinki, or certainly in the region.
Did we have anything to say about interesting transfers during the close season, or did we cover that earlier when we talked about Veikkausliiga?
I did have one that came out this week. Jaro have signed a player, a Mexican player who won an Olympic gold medal in 2012. He was on the Chavez. He was actually on the pitch in the final when they beat Brazil at Wembley. And Jaro made a big thing about the fact that the Brazil team had Neymar, Hulk, Thiago Silva, and this guy is now at Jaro. So if that's a good thing or not, I don't know. I think he was last playing in Syria. But yeah, it's nice. You know, he's a Mexican international.
Of sorts.
Well, he is. You know, I think he wasn't just one of their under-23 players. I think he actually has a couple of senior caps, but sombreros. But sorry, he'll be playing for Jaro this season anyway.
Okay, good. That definitely counts as an interesting transfer. Let's keep an eye on that. Unless anyone has anything else to add, I reckon we've been nice and tight. We've been going for about 50 minutes, which is somewhat miraculous for the Finnish football show after a couple of months off. But how about a quick reminder of our sites? Mark at FC Suomi, you've got regular reports on Huuhkajat players around the world, and I noticed that on your site there's a review of the recent Malta game, and also a brief article about some loanees of Huuhkajat players that have gone overseas.
Yeah, Robert Taylor scored on his debut. I think it was Monday for Tromsø. He went to Simo Valakari's Tromsø. So I've got to think. I think I need to work the hot links on that one again. But he scored, and Eero Markkanen scored in the Danish Cup earlier this week. So they're doing a bit of all right.
And Rich, looking at your site, Escape to Suomi, your most recent article is about your latest sponsorship deal.
Yeah, again, not having much time on my hands, there aren't many updates. But this year, I've been sort of helping out a lower division club in Helsinki called Ruisku, who play in the 5th division, but they are mainly a club filled with British and Irish expats who live and work in Helsinki. The rest of the squad is made up of players of all sorts of nations. There's quite a diverse mix there. So basically this season will be following their Regions Cup campaign. They are genuinely hoping to get promoted into the 4th division. They've also, I'm going to give myself a bit of credit. There was a bit of a story went around a couple of weeks ago of an English player in the lower leagues who he left his club in Division 8, Evesham United in the Southern League. He's moved to Finland to live with his girlfriend. He, looking for a club in Finland, got in touch with me. He is now training with Ruisku in Helsinki while he sorts himself out, gets his registration sorted. So Paul hopefully will be playing for Ruisku anytime soon. And if Ruisku are playing or have to resort to playing in their 3rd kit this season, anyone seeing that will see Escape to Suomi on the front of their shirts.
Fantastic. I'm tempted to try and get hold of one of those just so I can have your name on my shirt.
They're a lot nicer than the Finland ones. I got to choose the colours, so yeah, they're a lot nicer. I'm
impressed by your first foray into being a football agent, Rich, but 30% of nothing, it doesn't come up to much. You can't retire just yet on that. Well, no, but I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn profile. So. my first transfer negotiated. Finder's fee. That's good stuff. I think we should have a regular update, Rich, even if it's just recent scores and current league position for Ruisku as we go through the season. Yeah, well, I'm hoping the manager Gav Martin hoping to do a little Finnish football shorts. We'll probably have a little Skype chat for 10-15 minutes, and we can talk about the club and even maybe just a little bit of the state of lower division
football in the Helsinki region, because there's a very, very diverse mix of clubs down there. A lot of them have some very interesting stories.
Oh, that'd be good. It'd be good to get some other content going out there, and I think we should have a little shout out to Keke and to Henry, who have contributed in the past but have been a bit quiet of late. So come on, fellas, surely Keke must have a trip overseas to watch the Finnish national team coming up soon, and he can maybe do a little something for us, although he tends to have a lot of difficulty remembering his trips overseas.
I'm meeting him for a beer in a couple of weeks. There's a classic football shirts exhibition in London later this month. And yeah, so we're going to meet up there and go for a beer and have a look at some of these old kits.
A classic football shirts exhibition.
Yep.
You are a deviant.
I'll be wearing my Peru shirt with pride.
Okay, that's enough, because all I'm doing now basically is insulting Rich, and no need for that. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, search for my name, Mark Wiltshire, or search for the Finnish Football Show. I will do my damnedest to get this podcast out as quick as possible. So if you really want to listen, if you've watched this already and you really want to listen to it again, then what's wrong with you? But please do. And if you just listen to the podcast, let us know your thoughts on what we've been talking about using the Twitter handles that I mentioned before. And until next time, Mark, thanks a lot for joining me.
Cheers.
And Rich, thanks a lot.
There you go.
And the listeners, thanks for joining us. See you again soon.